So the problem here is if I disconnect the left and the right brakes and press on the right brake pedal, it shouldn't go that far. Here's the left, and the left side works, the right side doesn't. So I suspect the problem is, this is the new brake assembly, brake pad assembly, that this is the rod right here. This is that rod, and then it's attached to this band. Either the band is broken or this weld has broken on the old brake shoe assembly in there. So what I'm going to have to do is jack this side of the tractor up, take the wheel off, take the bolts out that hold the Dropbox off, and then the brake band is the drum and band is inside this housing right here. Take that apart and replace that, and then adjust it to where I have working brakes on both sides. Of course, the first step is getting the lug nuts broke loose on the wheel, and some of these were pretty tight. I don't know when they've been off, so I had to use my 36-inch long cheater to get them loose, but they're all loose now. So I can get those loose. I've got the jack just snug under the axle boss. I just need to lift it up a little bit and get it to where I can pop the wheel off, and then I can keep on going from there. Well, I got it out. Here's the drop box, and it wasn't broken. It wasn't broken here at all on the spot weld. It's broken right here near the loop end where it goes around the anchor pin. It was broken right there. So as you can see, there's where it broke. And so now it's just a matter of doing a little bit of cleanup here to get all this, what crap I want to get out of here, and then put the new brake band on and then reassemble it. You see there's a pin and a spacer here that go here, and then there's a corresponding hole on the axle flange. And also took a moment to reach up through the axle tube and dig all the crap that was there out, and the gear oil looks just a touch milky, so it probably needs to be changed inside the main gearbox. But getting this apart wasn't very difficult. It was just a matter of 6 cap head screws and nuts that hold this on. It also holds the fender on, and then the dowel pins. There's a top dowel pin here and a bottom dowel pin that stays on the axle housing, and just getting it worked off of those and then pulling it off. And as for the weight of this, it's definitely not something I'd want to pick up and carry around all day. It's not much heavier than an industrial sewing machine, I would say. I mean, it seems like it has about the same amount of weight. It's just awkward. Looks like a transmission out of a washing machine when you have it out. But anyway, so I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here and put the new brake band on and put it back together, and we'll see how well it works. So here it is with the new brake band installed, and this was actually fairly easy to do compared to some of the videos I've seen of the later style Cubs where there's a little toggle link in here and 2 pins. The easiest thing I found to do was to stick this pin in first, then lower the band on and hook the band on the pin, and then after that it all goes in fairly easy. And so there's what the band looks like on the brake hub, and like I said, there's the spacer right there. That pin has a little bit of slop, and that's probably what was hanging up although I shouldn't have, because there was no tension on it, but there's tension on it now, so it's going to take a little bit of fiddling to get it lined back up when putting it back on the tractor. But so this was actually really easy to do. So I'd put the pin in first, then put the band on, get the loop end of the band started on the pin, and then wrap it around and get the rod sticking out. And then the loop was a pretty tight fit on the pin, so I used a hammer and a hollow punch to drive it on down onto the pin and then put the spacer on. But now it's time to lug this thing back over to the tractor and put it back on and put everything together. Okay, everything's back together now, and as you can see, I have the new brake rod installed with new bands, and it's just a matter of taking this pin out and spinning this back and forth and adjusting it to where when you press these pedals down, they both go about the same amount, and then that way when they're linked together, they'll brake together. Okay, so I'm basically now ready to go take it for a test drive, and I've done a little bit of forming of this brake pedal with a large crescent wrench because it was a little bent up. So now the link goes in back and forth real nice and easy. And I've got them adjusted to where they're about the same. That's pretty dang close. So take it out, drive it around a little bit here, and see how it does. We'll start this thing up, and I'll drive it around the grounds and see how well the brakes work. Need to adjust the clutch on this thing. Will be the next project to do. But yeah, it should work just fine. That would help if the ignition was on. And I gave it some choke. Oh, if I gave it some throttle too. You know, there's a procedure for starting these. You should follow it. I don't think the gas is in the carb yet. I don't know if you can hear me, but it turns out it's warm enough outside. I was flooding it with the choke on. It really didn't need choke. So, like I said, the clutch needs to be adjusted on this thing next. And you probably can't hear me over the roar of the engine. So let's go out on the grounds and do some circles, shall we? One of the things about this tractor is the way it operates with the mower, using the mow deck, is it depends on the brakes to help stop the blades. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to shift it out of gear for a minute and reach down here and put the link back in place. Okay, so the brakes will operate as one now. Shift the mower into operation. Oop. Put this back in gear here. Alright. So this clutch, if you just let off on it just a little bit, it'll start turning, so it makes it a little hard. So that's going to be the next project to adjust. And we'll lower the blades down a little bit here. And give it some throttle. We're in first gear. Okay, that's actually not too bad. You can tell that the brakes on the right side are better now than the brakes on the left. And so I went from not having any brakes on the right at all to having really good brakes on the right and mediocre brakes on the left. So I'm gonna have to order another one of those brake bands and take this side apart and replace it. It's gonna be a little bit more difficult because it's got all this mechanism over here that raises and lowers the mow deck. This is a 1947 Cub. August of 1947, so one of the first few months of Cub production. They started to go on sale in May, and so it doesn't have hydraulics, and it never went back to the factory to be re-equipped with hydraulics. So there's no hydraulic lift for the mow deck. You've just got this, and this is factory. This counterbalanced mechanical linkage here, and it is easier to raise the deck than it is to lower it. It takes more effort to lower the deck than it does to raise it. But it works really great. It's a really great running rig. Let's do another little start and stop test. A little bit of squeal on the brakes. I've noticed on this right side the brakes squeal a little bit. But it sure stops a lot nicer than it did having both wheels. Of course, one of the nice things about a setup like this is when you get to the end of a row, you can use if you press the pedal right here in the middle, you can brake with both, but you can use the left or the right, and you can turn at the end of the rows. yeah, I like this. Alright, I believe I'm done with these tests here. Let's take it back to the building. Yeah, don't run it like that at slow speed. Don't try to use the differential brakes. You can get away with it in second gear. Don't do it in third gear though on this thing. But you can hear how it lugs the engine down trying to differential brake at slow speed. Alright, get this thing put back in and shut off. I leave it running and then I shut the fuel off and let it run until it uses all the fuel in the carb up, and then I pull the battery cable. Battery cable and then shut the ignition off. I know there's a cutout relay and it should keep the battery from going flat, but yeah, I don't really trust it that much, so this seems like a good idea. And it does charge. The generator on this thing, I want to convert this thing to 12 volt at some point. But for now it's got the original 6 volt Delco generator in it. And it had a magneto on it when I bought it. And I did rebuild the magneto because it was giving me all sorts of fits. But since this is a working tractor, or I bought it for use as a working tractor, and I, show it at the show too. For just general use, it's more economical to run the distributor on it. The tune-up parts for the distributors for these international harvesters are a lot less expensive than the magneto parts. I can buy four or five of these caps and rotors for the price of one rotor for the magneto. So yeah, doesn't really make sense to use the magneto. I still have it. You can stick it on there if I want to make the tractor look more authentic for showing. But as you can see, it is a working tractor. It's not a show queen. Bought it for mowing my yard, and that's what it does. It also helps keep the grounds trimmed up a little bit right before showtime. Anyway, so wanted to discuss what I thought of this, doing this project here. And I want to also say this was not a how-to video. I did not show step-by-step how to tear this apart. I don't think I would need to. Honestly, it's pretty obvious looking at the tractor how it should be done. And there's also other videos on YouTube. But basically, you remove block the tractor up, remove the wheel. There's 6 cap head screws and nuts that hold the fender and the Dropbox on. Plus, there's supposed to be 3. My tractor only has 1, but there's supposed to be 3 cap head screws and nuts, which hold the fender to the platform. And I think someone's been into this thing before and decided that they weren't necessary, and so there's only the one here. So I'm going to come up with 2 more to replace those, because those do add to the stiffness of the platform and make everything a little bit more rigid. And that's important too, because these brake linkages pivot off of these brackets on the bottom of the platform, and you want that to be nice and rigid. But it was fairly simple. I did it by myself. I didn't have any trouble. The Dropbox I didn't think was that heavy. Just sort of lift with your legs and not your back. And mainly it was getting it off of those dowel pins. I used a small pry bar to gently ease it off once all the screws were out. And then replacing the brake band, as you saw, as I explained in the clip earlier, was fairly easy. I'm definitely glad I've got one of these versus the later Cubs. From what I've seen, they're a little bit of a pain to do, though I think maybe if I had one of those, I might try putting the pins in first and then putting the band on like I did with this one. Because if I started putting the band in first and then trying to get the pin in, and it's like, actually I have a lot more I can do to manipulate the band if I put the pin in first and then get the band in. And then getting the pin started on the mating surface on the axle tube when I went to put the Dropbox back on was actually really easy. I just stabbed the axle in, lined the pin up first. It was longer than the dowels, and then lined the dowels up, and then got 2 screws started. Got the 2 bottom screws snug enough that they would hold the Dropbox in place, and then removed the top screw that I'd gotten started and put the fender on. So really, really simple. Oh, and I used never sees on everything. Everything came apart all right, but I'm a firm believer in never sees, and you can see this is now nice and bright and shiny because it's coated in never sees. I've put never sees on everything, and because I know this is going to eventually have to come back apart someday for other repairs or change that band again, and I'd like it to come apart relatively simply. So that's my tip of the day, is never sees rules them all. And then, this is just easy, pull the pin, spin this around, adjust it to where these are the way you want them, where they're both even, and then put the pin in, put the cotter pin in, and snug up the lock nut. The other side doesn't even have a lock nut, and I really don't think it honestly needs a lock nut, because it really can't spin or back off, neither one of these parts. But if the lock nut makes you feel good, put it on. So anyway, this Oklahoma Bridges and my Farmall Cub brake replacement video. Not a how-to, but just me doing it and you seeing what I did. And it's very simple. If you've got one and you're putting it off, get it done. It's nice to have brakes on both wheels.